In 2024, researchers made an amazing discovery in a library in Hamburg, Germany. Among a collection of ancient manuscripts, they found a small, fragile piece of papyrus that had been sitting unnoticed for years. At first glance, it didn't seem like much. Its handwriting was uneven, its lines were crooked, and it looked like it could have been someone's practice sheet. But when two scholars, Dr. Lajos Berkes and Professor Gabriel Noki-Matsei-Sado, studied it more closely, they noticed something incredible: the name Jesus, written in ancient Greek letters. What they had found was a piece of history that had been lost for centuries. It was a fragment of the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, a text that tells stories about the childhood of Jesus, stories that are not included in the Bible. The fragment is believed to be over 1,600 years old, making it the oldest surviving copy of this gospel ever discovered. This discovery was groundbreaking, not only because of its age, but because of what it reveals about how early Christians thought about Jesus as a child. It's a rare and valuable piece of the puzzle that helps us understand the diverse ways people saw Jesus in the early days of Christianity. The fragment contains part of a story that is both simple and miraculous. It describes Jesus as a 5-year-old boy playing by a stream. As he plays, he molds 12 small birds out of clay. For him, it's an innocent and creative activity, but someone nearby rebukes him. They accuse Jesus of breaking the Sabbath rules, which forbade work on that holy day. Instead of getting angry or apologizing, young Jesus does something extraordinary. He claps his hands, and the clay birds come to life. They spread their wings and fly away, leaving everyone around him astonished. This moment, known as the miracle of the Sparrows, is one of the most famous stories from the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. It shows Jesus as both a child with a playful imagination and someone with divine power. It's a story that captures the wonder of his dual nature, fully human and fully divine. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas is a very old text that was written in the 2nd century, about 100 years after Jesus lived. It's not part of the official Bible, which was decided on by church leaders many years later. Instead, it's one of many writings known as apocryphal texts. These are books that didn't make it into the Bible, but were still widely read and valued by early Christians. This gospel is especially unique because it focuses on the childhood of Jesus, a time of his life that isn't described much in the canonical Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. While the New Testament skips over most of Jesus' early years, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas fills in the gaps with stories about his youthful miracles and moments of wisdom that amazed those around him. For early Christians, these stories offered a way to imagine what Jesus might have been like as a boy. They weren't just curious about his teachings and miracles as an adult. They wanted to know what kind of child he was, how he interacted with others, and how his divine nature revealed itself even at a young age. Before this discovery, the oldest copies of the Infancy Gospel of Thomas that scholars knew about came from around the 11th century. That's almost 1,000 years after the text was first written. This new fragment, however, dates back to the 4th or 5th century, making it the earliest known copy of this gospel. The handwriting on the fragment is rough and uneven, suggesting that it might have been a practice sheet for someone learning how to copy texts. In ancient times, copying manuscripts was an important skill, especially for scribes in monasteries or religious schools. Even though the fragment seems simple, its age and content make it a treasure for historians and biblical scholars. This discovery shows that stories about Jesus' childhood were being shared and preserved very early in Christian history. It's a reminder that the Christian tradition is made up of many voices and perspectives, some of which have been lost to time. The story of the Sparrows gives us a glimpse into how early Christians thought about Jesus. They saw him as someone who was deeply connected to God and creation even as a child. The miracle of the sparrows isn't just about showing off his power, it's also a reminder of his role as the creator, someone who brings life into the world. These early Christians were fascinated by the idea that Jesus could be both fully divine and fully human. Stories like this one helped them understand how his divine nature might have shown itself in everyday moments, even in the playful acts of a young boy. At the same time, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas shows us that early Christianity wasn't a single, unified movement. Different communities had different ways of understanding Jesus and his life. The fact that this text didn't make it into the official Bible doesn't mean it wasn't important. It simply reflects the diversity of beliefs in the early church. When the leaders of the early church decided which books to include in the New Testament, they had to make some tough choices. They wanted to create a collection of texts that were consistent in their message and theology. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas, with its focus on Jesus' childhood and its mix of miraculous and everyday stories, didn't fit with the other Gospels. However, that doesn't mean the text was forgotten. It continued to be copied, read, and cherished by some communities for centuries. This fragment shows us that the Infancy Gospel of Thomas was still being shared as late as the 4th or 5th century. The discovery of this fragment is a reminder that history is full of surprises. Even in our modern world, there are still ancient stories waiting to be uncovered, hidden in libraries, caves, and other unexpected places. The story of the sparrows isn't just about a miracle, it's about creativity, wonder, and the way people have always been drawn to the mystery of Jesus. It shows us that faith isn't just about rules and doctrines. It's also about imagination and the desire to understand the divine in new ways. What other ancient stories might still be out there, waiting to be discovered? Could they give us even more insights into the life of Jesus and the beliefs of early Christians? This fragment encourages us to keep asking questions and seeking answers. It's a piece of the past that connects us to the early followers of Jesus and their journey to understand who he was and what he meant to the world. Perhaps the miracle of the sparrows is more than just a story about divine power. It's also a reminder of the beauty of creation and the endless curiosity that drives us to uncover the hidden treasures of history. What do you think this story reveals about the childhood of Jesus? Could there be more lost texts like this one, waiting to be found? Whatever the answers, one thing is certain. The story of Jesus continues to inspire wonder, even after 2,000 years.